Champ now. Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, Champ?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, say one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's CASSPORTS again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of CASSPORTS, the Boxtorian. Today, highlights of boxing history. Highlights of boxing history. How's the family today? It's Friday, at the end of another big week of boxing history. Not going to do a profile today. We're just going to talk about a couple of different things concerning boxing history today, okay? Yesterday was the 44th anniversary of Muhammad Ali's last fight, September 11th, 1981. Definitely for the couple fights too long. We're going to talk about that today. Okay. And then, speaking of Muhammad Ali, the great Eddie Futch. He was Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Muhammad had 5 losses. 4 of those losses, Eddie Futch was the opposing trainer. We're going to talk about the great Eddie Futch and as far as his relationship with Muhammad and how he was Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. What if Eddie would have trained Ali? Wow. Okay. What makes a fighter have a good chin? We're going to talk about that today too. And I was looking at something yesterday, and it did a poll recently. The best British fighter of all time. And Joe Kozaki got the majority. That's obviously people who've been following boxing for like the last 20 years or so. Because my top 10 British fighters of all time, Joe Kozaki not even in the top 10. I'm going to take a look at the top 10 British fighters of all time. Now, take nothing away from Joe Kozaki, very good, talented fighter, but best British fighter of all time? No. Those are obviously people that just been following boxing for the last 20 years or so. They probably never heard of Jimmy Wild or Ted Kid Lewis or Bob Fitzsimmons. Some of those guys, even Lennox Lewis, I put him in front of Joe Kozaki. But those other guys fought back in the early 1900s, mid 1900s. Those fans that say Joe Kozaki is the best British fighter of all time probably never heard of those guys. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about weight bullying. Some people say it's a myth. We're going to talk about that today. Okay. And did Muhammad Ali ask Angelo Dundee to cut his gloves off after round 14 in the Thriller in Manila? We're going to talk about that today. All that and more today on Cass Sports The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Okay. It's Friday. Diego Pacheco back in the ring tomorrow. Probably the biggest name of the weekend, I guess. Well, we had a fight last night, and got some action tonight, too. Yeah. Haven't looked at it. No big names, but it's boxing. Okay? But before we get into all these subjects today, first thing we're going to do is have our fight of the day. You know, we always reach into the archives to start the show and come up with a classic fight. So let's get ready to get into that. But how's everybody this Friday afternoon? Nice and mild outside. It was freezing yesterday. I didn't put on enough on my walk. Then today, I put too much on. End up carrying stuff. But hey, let's get into it. Without further ado, let's get into today's fight of the day. If I can find the cursor. Fight of the day. Okay. Today's fight of the day is Jeff Harding versus Dennis Andres. September the 11th, 1991. A brutal finish to a brutal trilogy. Okay. And that's 34 years ago yesterday. That was 10 years after Muhammad Ali's last fight, September 11th, 1981. Wow. Didn't even notice that. Yeah. But Jeff Harding versus Dennis Andres, excuse me. A brutal finish to a brutal trilogy. September 11th, 1991. Okay. That's today's fight of the day. Let's get into it. 34 years ago, yesterday. Some fights are, by no way of an exaggeration, tiring even to watch. Case in point, the third and final light heavyweight war between the superbly evenly matched Jeff Hardy and Dennis Andres. Two men, both as hard as nails, both with inner reserves of stamina to die for, with each man also possessing a great heart, a rock for a chin, and let's be honest, less finesse than a number of world champions. It all added up to one of the most action-packed and exhausting trilogies to take place at 175. As a matter of fact, at any weight, okay? These warriors had 3 battles, with both men pushing themselves almost beyond human limitations, okay? Almost beyond human limitations, these two fighters did. There's a shot of Jeff Hardy right there. Age aside, Andres was said to have been born in 1953, yet plenty of people felt he was older, with Harding being born in 1965. These two were just about as perfectly and evenly matched as any two fighters you could point at. It was almost impossible for either man to gain an edge. The total on both men was incredibly high. The combined 31 rounds over 3 fights of savage, two-way action, seeing to it that neither guy had too much left in the tank at the end. The final fight took place back in 1991, and Harding and Andre saved the best or the worst in terms of what they did to each other for last. Warring this time in Andre's home country, the fight going down in London. The first fight had taken place in Atlantic City, New Jersey on neutral territory. The second fight was in Harding's home, Melbourne, Australia. And the rubber match was in Andre's in London, England. Fans were treated to an epic slugfest. One that somehow went all 12 rounds and amazingly featured 0 knockdowns. Okay, 0 knockdowns. Amazingly. Andres, now officially 37 years of age, coming into this fight, was making the third defense of his third reign as WBC light heavyweight champion. Harding, who had only 1 loss on his record. This was the second fight with Andres. That was his only loss. He was trying to become a 2-time WBC champion. Now, Andres was a somewhat grizzled, 39 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws. Harding came in age 26, had 20 wins and 1 loss. And again, that 1 loss was the Andres in their second fight. In this trilogy, here's a shot of Andres. Mike Rim is in the building. Salute, Mike. Fighters a day. Jeff Harding versus Dennis Andres. A brutal finish to a brutal trilogy. This was 34 years ago yesterday. 10 years after Muhammad Ali's last fight. September 11th, 1981, and we're going to address that. Muhammad Ali's last fight was 44 years ago yesterday, December 11th, excuse me. December 11th. Yeah, Harding and Andres was September 11th, excuse me. Ali was December 11th. My bad. Okay, salute Mike Rim. Okay, now, the two men went at it right from the opening bell. And nothing had changed from the first 2 fights. Not tactics, not the pacing of the fight, not the sheer ton of leather chucked out by both men, nothing had changed. As for fight one, Andres got off to a great start, cracking Harding with big shots, his roundhouse rights bouncing off Harding's head and chin. But also like the first fight, a bleeding Harding came on strong in the later rounds. It was a grueling ordeal with only the inner grit, the sheer desire, and the refusal to quit, keeping both men in the fight. Andres was feeling it bad in the final 3 rounds. His face swollen. Andres was on the verge of collapse. How he made it through to the final bell, his aging body aching, soaked in sweat, and screaming fatigue, nobody knows. It was painfully close at the end, and in truth, neither man deserved to lose. A draw would perhaps have been the fair result. But would we have then called for a 4th fight? That's another subject for another day. As it is, Harding won by majority decision. 115-113, 115-114, and 114-114. Yep, majority decision for Harding. The damaging series had come to its end. Harding won the series 2-1. But these two vastly underrated and seemingly often underappreciated fighters never really did settle things as far as proving who the superior fighter was. Never settled things, but Harding came out of it 2-1. Harding and Andres gave us a thrilling, punishing trilogy that showed us in quite graphic detail how tough fighters really do have to be. Okay, showed us just how tough fighters have to be. Fight of the day, Jeff Harding versus Dennis Andres. A brutal finish to a brutal trilogy. There's your winner, Jeff Harding. And this fight took place in London, home of Andres. Okay, so we're going to look at a number of different things today. Like I was just saying, yesterday was the anniversary of Muhammad Ali's last fight, December 11th, 1981. Okay, 44 years ago yesterday. So we're going to take a look at that. Did Ali stay around too long? A couple fights too long, as a matter of fact, because he really shouldn't have had the Holmes fight either. Nicked to his last fight. And he deserved better. You know, at the end, the greatest deserved better. Let's take a look at that. Starting out with Muhammad Ali. This Friday. Had some action last night. I didn't see it. Got thinking some fights tonight, and we got some tomorrow too. We're going to take a look at Eddie Futch. Eddie Futch was Muhammad Ali's kryptonite because, like I said, Ali had 5 losses. Eddie Futch was the opposing trainer in 4. And just think, suppose Eddie Futch had trained Ali, but he did have a pretty good trainer, a good legendary trainer in Angelo Dundee too. So, but Eddie Futch knew it. Let's take a look at Ali. Final fight was 44 years ago yesterday. Yeah. Mike Rubin says a temporary ban from boxing hurt Tyson and Ali. But Mike said he grew up on Cassius Clay. So did I, Mike. Yeah, I grew up on Cassius too. His incredible career came to an end 44 years ago yesterday. Muhammad Ali. A good shot of the greatest. Okay. If Muhammad Ali's fight with Larry Holmes was one fight too many, the 39-year-old was able to make it two fights too many. For it was yesterday, 44 years ago yesterday, back in 1981, when Ali, needing money as well as fame, returned to fight yet again, despite his poverty in the Holmes fight of October 1980, a year earlier. Now, the Berbick gamble. Everybody really thought Holmes was it, but Ali came back for another one. The Berbick gamble. Enter Trevor Berbick. Ali insanely still had ambitions to make good on his 4-time champion ambition, right? So 3-time, ended up being a 3-time champion. If he had to beat Berbick, if he could defeat Berbick, a solid heavyweight, if nothing too spectacular, Ali would have got his chance, to be a 4-time champion. All these years later, when we know the full and awful price Ali paid for having fought on for far too long, the thought that he would have had another fight if he had beaten Berbick is chilling. But Ali didn't win the Berbick fight. In fact, he looked awful. Yeah, that finally convinced him to get out of there. Because just think, if he would have won the Berbick fight, he would have kept on fighting. And look at the condition he ended up in. Just think if he would have kept on fighting after the Berbick fight. But he looked awful. Okay? Against Berbick, Ali came in at a career high, 236 pounds. His body was soft and fleshy. But then again, to be charitable, at least Ali was able to fight back against Berbick. This was something he was unable to do against Holmes. And in the fight with Berbick in the Nassau, Bahamas, Ali actually managed to win a few of the 10 rounds, right? Fight was scheduled for 10 rounds. He didn't win any rounds against Holmes. He actually won a few rounds against Berbick, okay? Wow. And in the fight against Berbick, he actually won a few rounds. Now, he couldn't dance like he once could, but he did make an effort, to get on his toes and to also pump out some punches. There was no snap or sting on Ali's shots. He could no longer float like a butterfly or sting like a bee. But against the physically strong but lumbering 26-year-old Berbick from Jamaica, Ali was able to hit a final bell. And the bell used for the fight was actually a cowbell, as no standard bell was available. It had to use a cowbell. That was really a bad promotion down there. I believe Don King, because remember, we was talking Monday, Ali had signed a contract with Don King that any fight he had after the Holmes fight would have had to been promoted by Don King. And Don King heard about that fight and went down there complaining. And I believe he got beat up. Some of the people that were involved in the promotion beat Don up and sent him back home. Mm-hmm. There was almost no fight at all. Berbick was still uncommitted to fighting just hours before the fight was due to take place, due to start. Berbick wanted assurance he would be paid in full. The entire show was something of a farce, with ticket sales poor, and all the undercard boxers had to share the same dressing room, right? Same dressing room. Had a cowbell for the bell. It was no way for the finest heavyweight boxer of all time to go out. But finally, at least, it was over. He was going out. That was the good part about it. Was no way for him to end it, but at least finally, he was going out. The last bell for the greatest. Now, Ali had fought his final fight. No longer would he put his health, his life even, on the line. To this day, those two final fights against Holmes and Berbick, it bugged the hell out of Ali's fans, seeing him get back in that ring. And he was almost 40 years old. And in the condition he already was suffering from Parkinson's. Yeah, it even bothered me. You see Ali still fighting. When he's getting ready to fight Holmes, we were saying, what is he going to do? How can he possibly win? He had no path to victory at all. And although Berbick was at really top level, he had no path to victory against Berbick. Okay? Now, without those last two fights, it could have been an almost perfect career. He was a 3-time champion. He had 3 losses, but each one of those first three losses had been avenged. Yep. He would have been waving goodbye with a satisfied smile on his face. But instead, he ended up leaving on a sadder note. As a man, he said he'd never end up like Joe Louis, right? And the way Joe Louis went out, Joe Louis got knocked out in this last fight. Ali said he wasn't ending up like that, but went out just as sad as Joe did. But at least Ali was never knocked unconscious through the ropes, the way Joe Louis ended up by Rocky Marciano in his final fight. And that was like 30 years before Ali fought Berbick. That was like 1950, early 50s. At least Ali didn't go out like that, but he still went out on a very sad note. Still, as we all know, Ali's real fight came after he'd hung up his gloves. This was a battle with Parkinson's. They raged until the very end, until his death. We will never know if Ali's latter year health would have been better had he quit the ring 2, 3, 4, or even 5 fights sooner than he actually did. We would never know. Suppose he'd have quit after the first Spinks fight. At least the second one. Maybe the Parkinson's wouldn't have got as bad as it did. But we'll never know. In short, the greatest should have had a far more dignified career the way it ended up. Right? Muhammad Ali. The greatest deserved better at the end. Okay? We just got a few short stories today. Now, Eddie Futch. Eddie Futch was Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Okay? Five losses. Both of those last two were Eddie Futch trained fighters, Holmes and Berbick. Eddie Futch, Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Arguably the greatest trainer ever. And like I was saying, just think if Eddie Futch would have trained Ali, although he did have a great legendary trainer, Angelo Dundee. Yeah, Eddie Futch, Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Next. Got like 6 short stories for us today. I'll be right with you. Okay. And I believe Muhammad Ali retired like a week after Joe Frazier did. 1981. And it's sad because Ali said he wasn't going out like Joe Louis did, and then look at the way he ended up going out just as bad. In the ring too long, getting beat up by men in his prime. Wouldn't even had no business being in the ring with him. But that's the fight game. Okay, Eddie Futch, Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Let's get into that. There's Eddie, the great Eddie Futch. Now, for many people, Eddie Futch is the greatest boxing trainer of them all. Okay, he was a trainer of champions. And he was a fighter himself. Okay. Now, he was forced to give up on a promising boxing career of his own due to a heart murmur that was detected in the 1930s. So he switched his brilliant boxing brain to the training side of the sport. Okay? And what a good thing, what a great thing this really did turn out to be for the fighters Eddie Futch went on to train. Eddie Futch's first world champion came in 1958 when his fighter, Don Jordan, won the World Welterweight Championship. 1958, Eddie's first champion, Don Jordan. Futch went on to train excellent fighters who excelled in large part due to the guidance and wisdom of Eddie, such as Alexis Arguello, Montel Griffin, Marlon Starling, and Wayne McCullough, just to name a few. Yet, it is as a trainer of world heavyweight champions that Futch is perhaps best celebrated. Okay, his heavyweight people. And Eddie Futch's brilliance seriously affected the career of one great heavyweight he never trained, right? His brilliance seriously affected the career of one great heavyweight he never changed. We know who that is, Muhammad Ali. Right? Muhammad Ali. No less than 4 fighters Eddie Futch trained managed to defeat Ali. They were Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Larry Holmes, and Trevor Berbick. In those last 2 losses, Ali really didn't have any business still being in the boxing ring. But those 4, Frazier, Norton, Holmes, and Berbick. And Eddie Futch said that Riddick Bowe was probably the best of them all, had the potential to be the best of them all if he'd have really wanted it and trained and acted like he wanted it, right? Lived the boxer's life, which Riddick didn't do. So that's high praise from Eddie Futch. Now, Eddie Futch's master game plans really came into effect in the fight Frazier and Norton had with Ali. Okay? Really made a difference. Now, Futch began training Joe Frazier in the late 1960s. And it was Futch who instructed the small Frazier to adopt his famed barb and weave, get down low approach. Okay? This constant state of movement and with his sheer pressure saw Frazier beat up bigger men. Not just beat bigger men, beat them up. Okay? And that was Eddie Futch that first started Joe Frazier that barb and weave, get down low style. But of course, Joe's mean left hook also had a lot to do with his success, right? Yeah, Eddie Futch didn't teach that. Joe always had that left hook. Had a lot to do with it. Now, Futch trained Joe Frazier for all 3 of his epic fights with Muhammad Ali, right? And Smoking Joe gave Ali sheer hell in each in every fight they had, all three of them. Okay, 44 rounds. Well, no. One was 12. First one was 15. The second one was 12, 37. The last one was 14. So 51 rounds, right? No. 12 and 15 is 27. 41 rounds, right? 41 rounds altogether. 12, 15, and 14 because Eddie threw the towel in the last one. And we're going to talk about that too. That situation with the towel coming in the last fight. But 41 rounds of sheer hell he gave Ali, every one of those 41, okay? Let me see. Okay, the first fight was 12. First fight was 12. The second fight was 15. No, the first fight was 15. Non-title fight back then was 12 rounds, the second fight. And the third fight was 14. 41. 41 rounds. I can count, but I got a calculator sitting right there. Use it. You have 14 rounds of sheer hell Joe Frazier put Muhammad Ali through. Okay? Now, of course, Frazier beat Ali in the fight of the century, the first fight. And plenty of the credit for the win went to Eddie Futch. Now, Futch instructed Frazier to target Ali's body, to forget about his head early in the fight. Because Futch knew how blindingly fast Ali was, okay? How his uncommon speed allowed him to pull his head back from a shot and make it miss. So he told Frazier, forget about the head early. Go start going through the body until I instruct you to. So Frazier attacked Ali's body like nothing you've ever seen. And finally, when Ali's hands inevitably dropped, when fatigue set in, Joe went upstairs. Okay? That's when Frazier went upstairs. Now, Eddie Futch was aghast in the rematch in the second fight at the way the referee, Tony Perez, allowed Ali to hold Joe behind the neck again and again. Eddie Futch even counted the number of times Ali was allowed to get away with the foul when watching a fight on tape. So for the third fight, Thriller in Manila, Eddie was determined to avoid a repeat of all that holding Ali did behind the head. So in the Thriller in Manila, Futch saw to it that an unknown referee, Carlos Padilla, worked the fight. You know, a referee Ali didn't have before. It was unknown, kind of new. So they couldn't really go influence him. They didn't have any kind of relationship with him or anything. So Futch got Carlos Padilla, right? And Padilla was known for breaking fighters, not allowing them to hold. Ali's tactic of grasping his rival's neck and getting a chance to rest was gone, you know, and taking the energy out of his opponent. It was gone. I remember like the second round, Padilla walked up to Ali and broke him and put his hand on Ali's neck. You know, physically demonstrated him. He wanted him to stop doing that early in the fight, so he took that away from him. I know Mike remember that. Padilla walked up to Ali like the second round and put his hand on Ali's neck. That's going to stop. So yeah, he effectively stopped him from doing that in the second fight. I mean the third fight, because he did all that holding in the second fight. Yeah, they had Padilla. Now the fight was brutal. The pace was almost too much. Only Ali's immense willpower told him the victory. This was the third fight. That and Eddie Futch's brave decision to pull his almost blinded warrior out at the end of the 14th round. This perhaps Futch's finest hour. Who knows what terrible things might have happened had round 15 been allowed to happen. Peter let Joe Frazier go back out there. Who knows? Because Ali just humbled him in that 14th round, but Frazier just wouldn't go down. And Frazier said after the fight, he couldn't even see Ali. He said all he could see was this shadowy figure in front of him. He just tried to get close, and he said, I knew Ali was just as tired as I was, so maybe I could get a lucky left hook and it flowing. But he said all he could see in front of him was a shadowy figure. So Eddie pulled him out in the 15th round. Who knows what would have happened in that 15th round? Could have had a ring death or something, you know? Futch knew Ali better than anyone. The only one that knew Ali better than Eddie Futch was Angelo Dundee, Ali's trainer. Only one knew Ali better than Eddie Futch. And he guided his second most famous heavyweight to victory over Ali in 1973, that being Ken Norton. And some even say Ken Norton actually beat Ali 3 out of 3 times, okay? Including yours truly, me. Yeah, I thought Norton won all 3 fights, but he did get the first. But you can't call them robberies because they were those kind of fights, you know? But it went either way, all 3 of them. But you know, this was Muhammad Ali. Close fight like that, Ali getting the decision, okay? So yeah, but a lot of people, including me, thought Norton won all 3 of those fights. Okay, but the judges didn't. They may have thought he did, but they didn't give it to him. Like I said, they had I think it was 20-something newspaper people in the 3rd fight they polled, and I think all but 3 of them gave it to Norton. Mm-hmm. Something like that. I forgot the number, but whatever it was, all but 3 of them gave the fight to Norton. But the judges didn't. But let's continue. Yeah, Eddie Futch, Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Okay. Now, Futch had Norton battle Ali's superb left jab with his own fine and underrated jab. Okay. Yeah, Norton had a pretty good jab too. He told Norton to out-jab the jabber. Now, Futch told Norton to watch out for Ali's pectoral muscle to twitch. And then he told Norton when that pectoral muscle twitched and Ali jab would be following a split second later. See, the man knew Ali down to that little detail. When his pectoral muscle twitches, he get ready to throw a jab. Okay, told you. The only one that knew Ali better than Eddie Futch was Angelo Dundee, his actual trainer. Okay? So, Norton was able to out-jab the greatest as a result of Eddie Futch's observations. Okay? Ali never had anything but a tough, hard, and frustrating time of things when he faced Ken Norton. Nothing but a tough, hard, and frustrating. And they had, I think, 2 12-rounders and 1 15 because their first 2 fights, neither was for the title. So they had 39 rounds, 12, 24. The last one was a title fight, 15. And every one of those rounds were nothing but frustration and pure hell for Ali. Maybe even worse than Frazier. Mm-hmm. Probably more frustrating. Now, Futch really was Ali's kryptonite. He studied Ali. Picked up on things that nobody else saw. Futch knew Ali inside and out, which really does make a fight fan wonder what would have happened if heavyweight history had been different, if Eddie Futch had actually trained Ali, right? Ever think about that? The way he knew him? What would have happened if Eddie Futch would have trained Ali? There is little doubt, in my mind, should be in anybody's mind, that if Frazier and Norton were trained by someone other than Eddie Futch, their fights with Muhammad Ali would have been vastly different, with very possibly different outcomes. Anybody but Eddie Futch training those 2 would no doubt have been vastly different and very possibly likely different outcomes, okay? Eddie Futch was a great boxing trainer who really knew how to train a fighter to fight great. Eddie Futch, okay? Let's move on to our next story. Highlights of boxing history today. 2 different stories. We just finished Eddie Futch, Muhammad Ali's kryptonite. Next, this is a good one here. What makes a fighter have a good chin? Okay. What makes a fighter have a good chin? It's one of the greatest chins in history. Now, in football, they always say you can't teach speed. You can't teach chin, but you can improve it. But you either got a good chin or you don't. You can't teach it. Now, through exercises and stuff, you can improve your chin, but you can't teach it. You either got it or you don't have it. Okay? You cannot teach chin, like you can't teach speed. But what makes a fighter have a good chin in the first place? Okay? Now pay close attention to this guy right here on the screen there. And even closer attention to his skull shape and morphology, particularly the curvature just above the brow line. Okay? It has been speculated that Marvelous Marvin Hagler's skull was the closest human equivalent to a motorcycle crash helmet ever seen. Okay? That's to say that much of his chin strength was the result of a tremendously strong and impact-resistant skull. It has actually been suggested either his skull was double coated or twice as thick and hard as a normal human skull. Okay? There was a very specific time when all this outlandish speculation began. April the 15th, 1985, to be exact. Know what happened on that day? April 15th, 1985. That fight right there. Okay? April 15th, 1985. On that April night, in a Caesar's Palace parking lot, Hagler's head was exposed to the most fearsome punishment ever seen in the modern era of boxing. During 8 minutes of hell against the hitman Thomas Hearns, Hagler took all manner of clean headshots from one of the most murderous pound-for-pound punchers in boxing history. Okay? Pound for pound, he's right up there with Shavers and George Foreman. If you're looking at from welterweight, pound for pound, Hearns is one of the best punchers of all time. That's what I'm trying to say. Ray Patterson, what's up, Ray? How are you today? Looking at a number of different subjects. Now we're looking at what makes a good chin. And like I was saying, you can't teach chin. Like they always say, like for football, you can't teach speed. You either got speed or you don't have it. You either got a good chin or you don't have it. Now you can improve on it, but you either got it or you don't. But salute Ray Patterson. RP, straight out of New Jersey, is here. Salute. Okay, but yeah, that chin was tested that night, April 15th, 1985. The hitman was getting some clean shots in on him. And the hitman is one of the best punchers pound for pound in boxing history. Okay, bar none. He got all manner of clean headshots on the Marvelous One. And the Marvelous One didn't go anywhere. Okay? In the first round, Hagler was badly stunned. And it seemed like he was very, very close to being knocked out. By rights, he should have been stretched out. But something strange happened. Something quirky and surreal kept him upright on his feet. You can see Hagler's body and legs buckling beneath him, but his head somehow stood tough. It is believed that some of Hearns' hardest punches were actually being deflected off Hagler's head, similar to how stealth bomber deflects radar. In other words, impacts of those bombs Hearns were throwing were somehow being dissipated and channeled away from his brain by the unique crash helmet curvature of his skull. Yeah. Again, look at it. marvelous one. Chin strength is clearly mostly genetic, but it can be improved somewhat by neck exercises. Like I was saying, you either got chin or you don't have it, but it can be improved by neck exercises, okay? Can be improved somewhat. A thick and strong neck is believed to lessen the whiplash effect to the brain. More often than not, you will find the boxers with thick necks have good punch resistance. Oppositely, fighters with thin necks usually go over more easily. Another neck dimension, which is critically related to chin strength, is the actual physical vertical length of the neck and spine. A longer neck will inevitably contribute to a greater whiplash effect, and a shorter neck vice versa. Okay? Finally, a more obscure factor, which also contributes significantly to chin strength, is the actual mechanical process during a chin strike. Okay? The actual mechanical process during a chin strike. In this MMA image here, we can almost see the recipient's chin being depressed inwards and the upper skull being pulled forwards and downwards. Okay, see it? You can almost see the chin going inward and the upper skull being pulled forward and downwards, okay, in that picture. Thereby creating a torsional force. The more the chin is depressed forwards, then the greater the rotational force into the brain. Now, Hagler's freakily unique jaw, neck, and skull structure was perfect for minimizing this concussive force. Now, okay, this picture here. This picture. Now, observe the following side profile image of both Hagler and Hearns, okay? Now look at that picture. It is clearly apparent that Hagler has a much longer horizontal jaw length than Hearns, but a shorter horizontal skull length at the top. See it? I didn't get the whole of Hagler's chin, but you can still see it. Okay. Hagler has a much longer horizontal jaw length than Hearns, but Hagler has a shorter horizontal skull length at the top. It's clear. Okay. Now let's talk about that. Both these two dimensions will contribute positively to Hagler's chin strength in terms of minimizing the rotational force of a chin strike. This is exactly what happened during the fight, whereby Hearns landed much the harder punches, and yet he himself was the one who was knocked out. Okay? Yet again, we find at the highest level of boxing, punch power alone was not the decisive factor. Okay? It's not the decisive factor. It is relative punch power. Hagler and his team knew that he possessed greater relative punch power than Hearns, and this particular ingredient was most probably crucial in determining his crazy fight tactics. It was Hagler, not Hearns, who initiated the war. Okay? Hagler shocked everyone by turning conventional boxing logic upside down. If anybody else in the world tried this stunt against the hitman, they risked serious injury, let alone get knocked out. But when you're as tough as Marvin Hagler, You see what happened? Okay. What makes a good chin? So that was kind of interesting there. Okay. Now, yeah, I was talking about Joe Kawasaki. I saw this poll yesterday that was done recently with some British fans, and the whole question was, who is the greatest British fighter of all time? And they said Joe Kawasaki. And I'm like, no. But obviously, nothing against Joe Kawasaki. Is a very talented fighter, 46-0 and all that. But these were obviously fans that don't go past like the last 20 years or so, because they don't know about Jimmy Wild or Ted Kid Lewis or Bob Fitzsimmons. So I did a top 10, and Joe Kawasaki not even in the top 10, as far as I'm concerned. So let's look at the real top 10 British fighters of all time, because the poll said Joe Kawasaki, but no. These fans probably go back like 20 years or so. They probably never heard of Jimmy Wall and all those guys, man. Randy Turpin, even Lennox Lewis, right? And they put him above. I know they heard of Lennox, but they put Joe above him. But some of these guys fought in the early 1900s and middle. Yeah, they never heard of them. Or they definitely would not. I don't even have Joe Kawasaki in the top 10. But as far as British fighters, no. Now, like I said, nothing against Joe Kawasaki. Very talented, good fighter. Never lost, but not the best British fighter of all time by far. Not even close. Let's look at the real top 10. Now, this is subjective, but Joe Kawasaki is not even really in the top 10, to be honest with you. But era. Because all time is all time. That's a long time. That's you got to go past the last 20 years. Obviously, these fans didn't. All time is all time, right? That's a long time. That means every British boxer have to be considered, not just the ones you saw, but obviously these fans were going by the ones they knew about. But you can't blame them because they don't know. You don't know. You don't know. But when you're saying all time, you got to look at all time. Now, the British invented modern day boxing in 1867 when John Graham Chambers and his friend, Sir John Douglas, 8th Marquis of Queensberry, introduced rules to the game that changed it dramatically. They outlawed wrestling, required fighters to wear gloves, provided for a 1-minute rest between rounds, and gave a fighter 10 seconds to rise after getting floored. Now, he did have 30 before the Queensberry rules. You had 30 seconds on the mat. You could lay down there and take a nap and everything. And then the Queensberry rules changed it to 10 seconds. Because there wasn't many knockouts when a fighter got 30 seconds to get up. Wow. Okay. So, Hagler gets perm. Yeah, that's when Hearns had his perm in there. Then, yeah, Mike, you're right. Yeah, Hagler beat the perm out of him. It was dry by the time that fight ended. Mike, the perm was gone. Yeah, but the British invented boxing, and they made rules that changed the game. 15-minute rounds, 3-minute rest period. 1-minute rest period between rounds, 10 seconds on the mat. In the ensuing century, dozens of great fighters have emerged from the birthplace of the fight game. And now we're going to look at a listing of the 10 best. Now, it's never easy deciding who gets left off a list like this, but not everybody can make the cut. If they could, there would be nothing to fight and debate about. So these are the 10 best of the 10 best British fighters. Like I said, these fans that said Jimmy Wall probably never heard. Said Joe Garzaki was the best British fighter ever. Obviously, never heard of these other guys here. What's up, Mike Mazik in the building? Yeah, but all time is all time. When you say all time, you just can't say, go back and look at fighters that fought in the last 20 years. You got to look at all time, or just don't even get in the poll, right? Because again, all time is all time. Well, salute Mike Mazik. But here's the real top 10 British fighters of all time. This is all time. Okay, back century, all the way back to the 1800s. Number 1 is Jimmy Wald. Okay, 131 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, 99 knockouts. Now, it's hard for fans of any era to properly appreciate a man who fought several generations before their own. But Jimmy Wald's greatness should not be overlooked just because it occurred a century ago. A fighter's historical value is measured by how well he did against the best fighters of his era. And in this regard, Jimmy Wald has few peers in all of boxing. Never mind just British boxing. All of boxing. You can make an argument for him top 10 in boxing, not just British boxing. We're talking about British boxing today, though. Okay, top 10. Jimmy Wald number 1. Okay, let's continue. Look at the record again. 3 losses in 146 fights. Okay, 99 knockouts. Though Wald rarely weighed more than 100 pounds, he was among the best punchers ever. The Ring magazine placed him, get this, number 3 among the greatest punchers of all time, behind only Joe Louis and Sam Langford. This man fought right around 100, pound for pound, one of the best punchers of all time. Okay? And his mammoth winning streaks are rivaled only by those compiled by Sugar Ray Robinson and Willie Pep. Jimmy Wald is the number 1 British boxer of all time, and it's not even close, okay? Not Joe Garzaki. Number 2, Freddie Welch. Now, this is all time. This is not just the last 20 years. You say all time, this is all time. Number 2, Freddie Welch. 73 wins, 5 losses, 7 draws, 32 knockouts. Okay? It's unfortunate that when Welch is remembered at all, it's as the man from whom the great Benny Leonard won the lightweight title in 1917. Okay, again, this is all time. Man fought back around 1917. A lot of those fans that said Joe Garzaki didn't go past the year 2000. And they was like 2000 up to now. The question was all time. That's what we're doing now, all time. Okay. And it's true. There are worse ways to be remembered. But Welch was a hell of a lightweight in his own right, and his record against the best 135-pounders of his era proves it. As his record suggests, Welch was not the puncher Jimmy Wald was. Few were. And stylistically, he was at the other end of the spectrum. A quick-footed, fleet-fisted fighter who relied on the defense the way Wald relied on his power. But because he wasn't a puncher, doesn't mean Welch wasn't great. He was a superb boxer in an age when the ranks were full of tough, angry little guys who could fight. Welch was among the best. Okay, number 3, Jim Driscoll. Talking best British boxers of all time, not the last 20 years, all time. Number 3, Jim Driscoll. 52 wins, 3 losses, 6 draws, 35 knockouts. Okay? Like Welch, Driscoll was more defensive than offensive and kept his opponents off balance with superior footwork, speed, and science. He was a better puncher than Welch was. And to be frank, you could swap their places in this ranking without too much argument, okay? The primary difference is Driscoll lost to Welch by disqualification in Cardiff in 1910, and Driscoll never won a world title. Driscoll did everything to champion Abe Patel in their title fight in 1909 in New York that one fighter could do to another without knocking him out. And the so-called newspaper decision went his way unanimously. But this was a no decision era, in which any fight that didn't end in knockout was a no decision. Patel never gave him a rematch, and you couldn't blame him. And Patel was the champion, but it ended in a draw. So the newspaper decision gave it to Welch, but it officially was a draw, so the title didn't change hands. Okay, where are we? Number 4, I think. Yeah. Number 4 is Lennox Lewis. And he was fourth in the last 20 years, and they still gave it to Kozak. Lennox Lewis is number 4. 41 wins, 2 losses, 32 knockouts. This is number 4. Okay. 41 wins. Lennox said 32 knockouts. Okay, that's not too bad of a knockout rate. Let's see what it is. Oh, it's 70. 41. 78, not bad at all. 78% knockout ratio. But see, a lot of fans looking at the 46-0, and they're not looking at who he fought and who other people fought, and the ones with losses, who they were to, and all that kind of stuff. But nothing against Joe Kozak, but he's just not the best British fighter of all time. He might be in the last 20 years, but not all time. I have to stress that all time is all time. And a lot of those fans that did that poll obviously didn't look at all time. Now, there are those who would put Lennox Lewis at the top of this list, but only as a result of a favorable bias toward heavyweights or modern day fighters, or both. That's how Kozaki got to number 1, bias toward modern day fighters. Each of the fighters who rate higher than Lewis has more wins than he has total fights. And the breadth of one's body of work, not just its visibility, must weigh heavily in these discussions. That said, Lewis was a wonderful, mostly dominant heavyweight champion, whose greatest strength was his versatility. When facing a big puncher, such as David Toole, Lennox could move and box superbly. When confronted with a weaker man, say Andrew Galata or Franz Botha, he was no less destructive than was George Foreman or Joe Louis. And if this were a ranking of the greatest British heavyweights, there's little doubt Lennox would be at the top. As it is, there's no shame in coming in 4th. He's top 5, okay? Number 5, still ain't had no Joe Kozaki. Number 5 is the fighting blacksmith, Bob Fitzsimmons. Okay, Bob Fitzsimmons was the first 3-division world champion. Okay. Bob Fitzsimmons had 40 wins, 11 losses, 32 knockouts. Yeah. So that's right around the same as Lennox. That's probably over 80. Yeah, I think that's 80 on the dot. It is 80% knockout rate for the fighting blacksmith, Robert Fitzsimmons, better known as Bob. Yeah, you know how Roy Jones was one of only 2 middleweights to win the heavyweight, 2 fighters to start at middleweight, then win the heavyweight title. Bob Fitzsimmons was the first one. Started at middleweight, ended up winning the heavyweight title, the fighting blacksmith, Bob Fitzsimmons. Okay. You could argue Fitzsimmons' inclusion here, as he fought entirely in Australia and the United States, and never in Great Britain. But he was British, but he never fought in Great Britain. Nevertheless, Ruby Robert was born in Helston, Cornwall, England, and that qualifies him on this list. You could argue, too, that his position as boxing's first Triple Crown champion is overrated. The light heavyweight crown, which he won in 1903 by beating George Gardner, was mostly a publicity stunt by Gardner's manager. Still, Fitzsimmons was outweighed by 30 pounds when he knocked out Jim Corbett to win the heavyweight title, and was 40 years old when he stopped Gardner. His win over Jack Dempsey, the non-Imperial, this is the first Jack Dempsey, in 1891 was huge, and along with James J. Jeffries, who relieved Fitzsimmons of his heavyweight title, Fitzsimmons was one of the dominant fighters of his time. Okay? Okay, number 6. He's the top 10 heavy. I'm doing this because I looked at a poll yesterday of modern fans, and they said Joe Kawasaki. That got to rankle me a little bit, man. Because, you know, you're talking all time. You got to go all time. You know? Number 6 is Ted Kid Lewis. 173 wins, 30 losses, 14 draws, 71 knockouts. Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali will be forever linked. This how it is with Ted Kid Lewis and Jack Britton, who fought each other no less than 20 times between 1915 and 1921. Many times with the world welterweight title on the line. They passed it back and forth like it was the plague. But Britton wasn't the only great fighter with whom Lewis tangled. He fought all the best fighters at or around his weight, including Benny Leonard. And Lewis won the newspaper decision over Leonard, and he fought Maxie Rosenblum, Flapsy Maxie. Lewis beat Flapsy Maxie on a foul. Now, Lewis didn't stop there. He fought solid middleweights and light heavyweights too, most notably the brilliant Frenchman Georges Carpentier, who stopped Lewis in the first round. For Lewis, even heavyweights, such as South Africa's Alex Storbeck, whom Lewis stopped in one round, were on the menu. And in addition to holding the welterweight world title, Lewis was at varying times the British welterweight champion, the British and European welterweight champion, and the British middleweight champion. Okay? Ken Buchanan, number 7. That's Ken on the right. Ken Buchanan, number 7. Don't know Joe Kawasaki. Okay? Ken is number 7. Okay? Surely Joe will be in these last 3, 8, 9, or 10. Let's see. Ken Buchanan. Ken was 61 wins, 8 losses, 27 knockouts. Ken fought like the 70s, late 60s, 70s. Like Freddie Welch before him. Buchanan had the great misfortune of competing in the same era with a physical phenomenon to whom he would lose the title. Right? Who that was? The Hands of Stone. Now, Welch had Benny Leonard. Buchanan had Roberto Duran, who stopped Buchanan under dubious circumstances in their title fight in New Jersey in 1972. Now, much has been made in the ensuing years about how Duran never gave Buchanan a rematch. But no less a source than Hall of Fame manager and trainer Gil Clancy, who worked for Buchanan, owes it to lack of fan interest rather than any reluctance on Duran's part. Yeah, they said Duran fought dirty and everything, but he beat the crap out of Buchanan, and he would have beat him in a rematch trilogy 4 times. They fought 100 times, Duran won every time. And it was the Roberto Duran, and I blame it on the referee because the referee never reined Duran in. So, you know, that was Duran right up his alley. If he fighting dirty, thumbing you in the eye, hitting you low and behind the head, and the referee ain't stopping him, you think Duran gonna stop? No. So, that's what happened. Either way, Buchanan was a fine boxer puncher who might have enjoyed a long reign indeed had it not been for Duran's wall tenacity and charisma. As it was, Buchanan beat a fine fighter in Ismael Laguna for the title and defended against Ruben Navarro and then Laguna again before running into Duran. He also beat the great Carlos Ortiz albeit Carlos was 36 years old. It was his last fight. And he beat future champion Jim Watt. Okay? Ken Buchanan. Number 8. 3 more. Best British fighters of all time. Number 8. Is it Joe Kawasaki? No. It's Randy Turpin. Randy Turpin. The man who beat Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray beat him in the rematch, but Randy got Sugar Ray on his record as a win. Randy won 66 fights, 8 losses, 1 draw, 45 knockouts. Was a world middleweight champion in 1951. Took it from Sugar Ray, and then Sugar Ray took it back in the next fight, the rematch. Now, Turpin is best remembered for his shocking win over middleweight champion Sugar Ray Robinson in London in 1951. And it's true that a good deal of it was owed to Robinson's partying and philandering in the days leading up to what he thought would be an easy defense. But there was no such alibi for the rematch, which took place 2 months later in New York. And it was no easy night for Sugar Ray then either. Turpin, with his awkward strength and heavy jab, troubled Sugar Ray the way Ken Norton troubled Muhammad Ali. And Sugar Ray had to work mightily to regain the title from Turpin on a 10-round knockout. Either way, Turpin was more than the sum of his fights with Sugar Ray. He'd won the British and European middleweight titles before facing Sugar Ray, and afterward, he won the British Empire middleweight title. 2 losses to Carl Bobo Olsen and Tiberio Maida appeared to finish him as the top fighter by the end of 1964. But the next year, he claimed the British light heavyweight title with a knockout of Alex Bouton. And Randy was one of those 1950s middleweights I'm always harping about. Randy Turpin. Number 9. Is it Joe Kawasaki? Yep. Number 9. Greatest British fighters of all time? No, it's Chris Eubank, Sr. Chris Eubank, 45 wins, 5 losses, 2 draws, 23 knockouts. Middleweight, super middleweight, way for that. Eubank was the most frustrating of fighters to watch, in that you knew he could take out the likes of Ray Close at any time if he put his punches together. But on the rare occasions, he was predicted to lose against Graziano Riccigiani in Germany and against top British pressure fighters Nigel Benn, the first fight, and Henry Wharton, he had completely dominated. Eubank won 2 fights over talented Michael Watson, back-to-back, who had only lost to the superb Mike McCallum, the body snatcher, in the previous 5 years. Okay? Only one to beat Watson in the previous 5 years, and Eubank beat him twice. Eubank also had a draw with one world title holder in Ben in the second fight, and he beat another former world title holder, Riccigiani, who was unbeaten. He beat Riccigiani back-to-back, okay? It took 44 fights through much fame and acclaim in Britain before high-earning Eubank was finally toppled by Irish Steve Collins in Ireland. He came back to give future champion Joe Kawasaki the hardest fight Kawasaki has ever had to this day in his unbeaten history. And that's the only mention Joe Kawasaki gets in the top 10, because number 10 is Owen Moran. So Joe Kawasaki didn't make the grade. Wait a minute, man. I done got all out of Chris Eubank. There's Owen Moran right there, I guess. Yeah, I think I missed Chris Eubank. But Owen Moran is 10. Okay? Wow, that's kind of faded. But Owen Moran was 67 wins, 16 losses, 5 draws, and 33 knockouts. Number 10. Moran never officially won a world title, but it's hard to think of another guy who came so close so many times, against top-level fighters. Moran twice fought Jim Driscoll, once to a draw. That was Driscoll's last fight, and another time a no decision. He fought the great old champion Abe Patel 5 times, and battling Nelson too, and Ad Walgas and Packard McFarlane, all the biggest names among the lighter guys in the early 1900s. Moran had a hard time winning against the very top guys, and that's reflected in his record and in his position during the time as perennial contender. But no one had an easy time of it against him. He was as relentless and scrappy as any fighter you could name that came before or after him, and belongs among the great prize fighters of Great Britain. Okay, there's the top 10. No Joe Kozak. Okay, yeah. Great fighter, probably in the top 25 British fighters of all time, but not top 10. Okay, Nate, we're going to look at the most intense weight cuts in boxing history. Most intense weight cuts in boxing history. Okay, yeah. Let's look at that. You know, a little bit, some people say weight bullying is a myth, but I don't believe that. Look like that guy on the right there. He weighed in at 140, but on fight night, he was 165. That's weight bullying at its finest. You weigh in at super lightweight where the fight is scheduled to be at, but you fight at 165. Come on, man. Weight bullying is not a myth. Why do you think the IBF had a rehydration clause on all their championship fights? Because of weight bullying. They don't want anybody to have an unfair advantage, right? So if it was a myth, they wouldn't have a rehydration clause, would they? No. Let's look at some of the most intense weight cuts in boxing history. Okay? All right. Now, love it or hate it, weight cutting is a major part of combat sports. As long as weight classes exist, fighters will do what they can to gain a size advantage over their opponent. Now, while most modern fighters use sports scientists to lose weight safely during fight camp, this isn't always the case. Some boxers have been known to lose significant mass in short periods to make weight for their fights. This process involves severe calorie restrictions as well as massive water loss through severe thermal exposure, such as prolonged sauna sessions and hot baths. Now, this next sentence right here is the truest sentence I've said today. The version of the athlete that steps on the scale often is a very far cry from the one who steps foot inside the ring on fight night. The version of the athlete that steps on the scale often is a very far cry from the one who steps foot inside the ring on fight night. Okay, perfect example on the screen. The man on the right weighed in at 140, but he stepped in the ring on fight night at 165. That's truth right there. Weight bullying is not a myth, man. 25 pounds later, okay, for some of the most severe weight cuts that is affected the fighters during the fight. First one is Arturo Gatti versus Joey Gamat, 2000. Gatti, the all-action slugger, frequently made big cuts for his fights. Gatti agreed to fight Gamat at 141 pounds. Although he made weight as contracted, he walked into the ring at 160 pounds, 19 pounds heavier on fight night. Gatti had a distinct size advantage on fight night. Still think weight bullying is a myth? The man gained 19 pounds overnight, came in 160 as a middleweight, fighting at a contracted weight of 141. Okay? Arturo Gatti was a ferocious puncher with big knockout power. The extra pounds became evident quickly. Gatti won by a violent knockout in the second round after landing several vicious hooks. March was left unconscious on the canvas, being hospitalized. You see, that weight bullying is dangerous, man. You have weight classes for a reason. This guy supposed to be contracted at 141, a pound above the lightweight, but he ended up fighting the middleweight, right? And ended up being knocked unconscious and taken to the hospital by the heavyweight class. The result caused controversy, with regulators trying to introduce new weight-cutting laws, preventing fighters from regaining a certain amount of weight between weigh-in and fight night, but they still didn't do it. Members of Gamarch's management even claimed Gatti hadn't even actually made 141 at the weigh-in. But, you know, both camps got somebody right there watching. I don't know how they let him get away with that. They can't complain if he didn't make 141 because they got a man or lady right there watching for their team too. So how could he get away with not making the weight? No, you can't complain about that because that's your own fault. Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia. Errol Spence versus Mikey Garcia. Spence has a large frame. Had a large frame for the welterweight division. Garcia moved up from lightweight to challenge Spence. Junior lightweight to challenge Spence. Junior welterweight to 140 to challenge Spence for the IBF welterweight title. Both fighters made the 147-pound weight limit, but Spence was clearly the bigger man. No telling what he went back to on fight night. On fight night, okay, here we go. On fight night, Spence reportedly rehydrated up to 170 pounds. So now he's at super middleweight. Okay. Fighting the white at welterweight against a guy that never fought above 140. Okay. Garcia came into the fight with a perfect 39-0 record. But Spence was the bigger, stronger, and more durable fighter on the night. The weight disparity was crystal clear, with Spence dominating from pillar to post. He outlanded Garcia by 345 punches to 75. The fight highlighted the ongoing debate about weight cutting, followed by drastic rehydration. Although Spence successfully made weight consistently, he always made weight consistently at 147. The practice continues to create significant in-ring size discrepancies. You can go back up to whatever you want to go back up to. David Lemieux versus Karim Akor, I guess. What about weight bullying now? Lemieux faced French boxer Karim Akor after losing to Billy Joe Saunders in his challenge for the WBO middleweight title. Despite coming off shoulder rehabilitation, Lemieux remained at 161 pounds for the fight. On weigh-in day, he failed to hit the contracted weight. Now, Lemieux was afforded additional time to make the weight, but his manager informed the commission that he would not be making an attempt. Lemieux reportedly had 20 pounds to cut in the final days heading up to the fight. As a result, he forfeited a portion of his purse and was ineligible to win Akor's belt with a win. On fight night, Lemieux had a clear size and skill advantage, dominating the Frenchman over 12 rounds, dropping him toward the end. Ricky Hatton versus Juan Lezcano, 2008. Hatton versus Lezcano. Hatton was known for growing up between his fights. Hatton would often be photographed between fights, showing considerable weight gain. He indulged in unhealthy food and alcohol outside of camp, frequently packing on 40 pounds or more. After losing to Floyd Mayweather Jr. in 2007, Patton gained considerable weight. In his return to action, he faced Mexican Juan Lezcano in front of a home crowd at City Stadium in Manchester, England. Patton reportedly cut over 45 pounds in 10 weeks to hit the 147-pound limit on weigh-in day. Why not just go up to 154 or 160? Because he hit 147 and then go back up to where he belongs at and fight at 154, 160 as a welterweight, but really be 160. Fighting in the middleweight class, but really fighting at welterweight. That's why you don't just move up where you belong at. That's what weight bullying is all about. Squeeze yourself down to 147, but then on fight night, be like 170, like Earl was. That's weight bullying at its finest, man. It's not a myth. So he squeezed down to 147, lost over 45 pounds in the weeks leading up to the fight. But he made 147. This meant Hatton had to combine a grueling, calorie-restrictive diet on top of his fight camp. He had a fat camp. Textbook definition of a fat camp. He was forced to resort to severe dehydration in the final days before the fight. Hatton successfully defended his IBO and ring welterweight titles with a unanimous decision win, but he was hurt multiple times by Lezcano, with many speculating that severe weight loss was a contributing factor. Yeah, it can work against you too. You can be rehydrated badly and go in there and have a bad performance. That Hatton was hurt a few times by Lezcano. So Miguel Cotto versus Manny Pacquiao. His name, Cotto Pacquiao. Cotto agreed on a catch weight under his usual weight class. So he went down on the catch weight. Miguel Cotto began his career as a junior welterweight, but gradually moved up weight classes as he got older. To accommodate a big fight with Manny Pacquiao, he agreed to a catch weight of 145 pounds. While the 2-pound cut may seem minor, Cotto had difficulty. The additional weight loss combined with dehydration left Cotto physically drained against Pacquiao. He appeared weaker and less durable than normal. Although he started strong, Pacquiao's speed and power overwhelmed Cotto and he began to fade. Yeah, that's what I was meaning just now. You end up dehydrated and just not yourself in there. So the weight bullying can work against you too. In the final round, Pacquiao knocked Cotto down twice, eventually leading to a TKO. This fight demonstrated the impact that shedding an extra 2 pounds can have on a fighter. Jose Luis Castillo versus Diego Corrales 2. Castillo Corrales 2. Talk about weight bullying. Okay. 2005. Castillo failed to make the 135 pounds limit. Okay, failed to make it. The first fight between Castillo and Corrales was an instant classic with non-stop back and forth action in the pocket. Corrales eventually won by TKO in the 10th round. A highly anticipated immediate rematch was scheduled to take place 5 months later. Okay? Castillo missed weight by 3.5 pounds, meaning the fight was declared a no-title fight, making Castillo ineligible to regain the titles. He had lost to Corrales in the first fight. Now, through the first 3 rounds, the pair engaged in the same type of infighting as their previous clash, with both men trading heavy blows. In the 4th round, Castillo caught Corrales with a staggering left hand, knocking him down and leading to a stoppage. Despite the spectacular fight, Castillo's failure to make weight overshadowed the event. A trilogy was later announced, but again, Castillo missed weight, this time by 4.5 pounds. The fight was canceled, and Castillo subsequently moved up to welterweight where he should have been in the first place. And I don't blame Corrales' team for not taking this fight the next time, because they let Castillo come in 3.5 pounds over the second fight, and who knows what he rehydrated to. So he came in the third fight, the third fight, 4.5 pounds over. So because Corrales' team, like, no way. So they didn't have it. I don't blame him. Weight bullying at its finest. Oscar De La Hoya versus Manny Pacquiao. We're going to go past. We covered that one yesterday. Now, De La Hoya fought at welterweight for the first time in over 7 years. Nearing the end of his career and dropping a weight class to fight the pound-for-pound #1 was a big challenge for the Golden Boy. Oscar reportedly had a tough weight cut, but hit the limit as agreed. On fight night, he was a shell of his former self. I've heard him flat-footed and slow. Okay, so the next one is James Toney versus Roy Jones, 1996. Toney versus Jones, 1996. Toney was known for struggling with discipline in camp. Both fighters came into the fight undefeated, with Toney holding the IBF super middleweight title. The pay-per-view was heavily promoted, labeled the Uncivil War. Roy Jones Jr. was an underdog for the first time in his professional career. Toney reportedly shed over 20 pounds in the build-up to the fight, but as the champion, he made the 168-pound limit. In what was expected to be a barn burner, the fight unfolded as a one-sided contest. Jones fought spectacularly, punching in bunches in perpetual motion. Toney was slow and sluggish, in stark contrast to his usual confident counter-punching style. Jones won a lopsided decision. Toney's team blamed a harrowing weight cut as the reason for his lackluster performance. And Toney never fought at this weight class again. Okay, moved up. Chris Bird versus Sean George, 2008. Bird dropped the weight class to revitalize his career. Probably should have been going up. Bird was a top 10 heavyweight and world champion between 1998 and 2004. He won the IBF heavyweight title by defeating Evander Holyfield in 2002. After losing to Alexander Povetkin in 2007, Bird made the decision to drop the light heavyweight the following year. In his first fight at light heavyweight against Sean George, Bird lost over 40 pounds, hit the 175 pounds limit. Had no business fighting at light heavyweight. Bird struggled from the outset, getting knocked down in the first round and rocked in the second. The weight loss. As the fight wore on, Bird took a severe beating, showing a diminished physical condition and vulnerability that he hadn't at heavyweight. In the 9th round, Bird was knocked down twice more and ultimately stopped. He reportedly asked the referee to stop the fight, a rare occurrence for an experienced former champion. But the weight loss killed him. And #1, finally, is Gerald McClellan and Nigel Benn. Oh boy. Okay, bear with me for a moment. As always. But yeah, let's see. Like 30 seconds. We're back. We're back. There we go. Okay. Yeah, Nigel Benn and Gerald McClellan. Okay. Final one. Gerald McClellan is one of the biggest punchers in boxing history. 29 of his 31 wins came by way of knockout. 20 in the first round. Okay. Talking about some pop. 29 of 31, 20 in the first round. Wow. I didn't know he was punching like that. That's 93.5% knockout ratio. Okay. On February 25th, 1995, he faced Nigel Benn for the WBC super middleweight title. Although McClellan was going up a class to challenge for the belt, he still lost a significant amount of weight in camp. He appeared to be the bigger fighter when the pair met inside the ring. The opening round was ferocious, with McClellan knocking Benn out of the ring between the ropes. Benn withstood the early onslaught and fought his way back into the fight, beginning to land several shots of his own. As the fight wore on, both men exchanged huge shots and hurt one another in what was a thrilling fight. Unfortunately, McClellan inadvertently absorbed several shots to the back of the head throughout the fight. In the 10th round, McClellan began blinking and momentarily stopped fighting. He was clearly affected by something, eventually taking a knee and calling off the fight. Tragically, McClellan collapsed after returning to his corner and lost consciousness. He suffered a severe brain injury, leaving him blind, partially deaf, and unable to walk without assistance. A career of boxing at the highest level eventually took its toll on McClellan, and severely dehydrating his body ahead of fights certainly didn't help. Gerald McClellan recovered from his injury, but still faces long-term effects. His physical and mental health declined severely, and he has struggled financially with no means of income. He receives daily support from his family, helping him manage his day-to-day needs. You see, boxers don't have no pension or anything like that, so, I guess he's not eligible for Social Security or anything, as he got older, because, boxers don't have no pension plan or nothing. Okay, but anyway, one more thing. Did Muhammad Ali ask Angelo Dundee to cut off his gloves after the 14th round in the Thriller in Manila? Okay. Now, I heard him say on a show a few years after the fight that he did. That he wasn't coming back out. They didn't say nothing about cutting no gloves off. Even that was after the fight. But did they ask Angelo to cut his gloves off? Let's talk about it. Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. Okay. Oh, come on. Down to the last half hour and start acting crazy. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, get this last thing in. It's Friday. Monday, I'm going to try to have the show ready for making the fight. Hopefully. We'll get that in. But did Muhammad Ali ask Angelo Dundee to cut his gloves off after the 14th round in the Thriller in Manila? That's, like I said, I saw him on the show say he wasn't coming back out, but he didn't say nothing about asking to cut the gloves off. Okay. Now, according to the two people involved, Muhammad Ali and Angelo Dundee, this never happened. Okay. Ali never asked Dundee to cut his gloves off or stop the Thriller in Manila. There's absolutely no proof whatsoever that Ali wanted to quit in Manila. or that Dundee was asked to cut his gloves off. Okay, no proof. No proof, none, zilch, nada. According to Dundee, it never happened. Angelo Dundee, for the record, refuted any claim Ali asked him to stop the fight years ago in an ITV documentary. Okay? He said, Angelo said, believe me, it never happened. I'm the only guy talking in the corner, and Muhammad never talked back at me. I would shut him up. No, not a word about quitting. Muhammad didn't know what quitting meant. And Ali also said it never happened. Okay? Ali said, when it came down to it, I was worn out, beat down, but I would have come out, of course. I was not going to let Joe say I quit. Yeah, I believe that. But he did say that on a late night show years after the fight, but that's years later. I don't know why he said it, but he did say it. I heard him. But that fight now, I don't think he intended. If Joe Frazier would have came out, Ali would have came out. What happened at the press conference reinforced Ali's claims he would never quit. Both men struggled to even get to the press conference. Joe was blind. Ali was completely exhausted. Ali had collapsed in weariness in his dressing room and was not coming out for the after-fight press conference until he was told Joe Frazier was already at it. Ali said incredulously, Joe is going to the press conference? Seriously? Then Ali, determined not to let it seem he was ever second, forced himself to go as well, saying, if Joe's at the press conference, then I'm going. Okay? Couldn't let Joe Frazier outdo him. The myth about the gloves being cut off got started supposedly with Wali Muhammad, but it is almost impossible to believe. Wali Muhammad was one of Ali's cornermen, and supposedly he told Thomas Hauser that Ali wanted to quit at the end of the 14th round. There are numerous problems with this story that make it highly unlikely, to say the least. Wali Muhammad, it got started. Wali Muhammad told journalist Thomas Hauser that happened in the corner. That's what started all of this. Okay? Because when Ali said years later on a late night show he wasn't coming out, nobody would have paid attention to that. But somebody actually in the corner said Ali said that, told the reporter that. That's what started it. So, but it is highly unlikely. First, Wali Muhammad was not up on the ring apron in between rounds. He was down on the floor. With all the incredible noise in between the 14th and 15th rounds, there is no way Wali Muhammad could have heard what he supposedly heard from the position he was in on the floor. Okay? Not unless Ali was yelling it out, cut my gloves off. But no, I doubt that. So with all the noise that was going on at that point in the fight, last round coming up, Ali had just beat the crap out of Joe Frazier in round 14, but Joe Frazier kept coming. The crowd was screaming, going crazy. So from where Wali Muhammad was at, no way he could have heard Ali even if he had said that, okay? So I don't know why he would make that up. Wali Muhammad left Ali's employ after Manila and was bitter about it, okay? Maybe that's why he said it. He was giving his walking papers, and he was bitter about it, okay? Ali had just hit Frazier with 30 straight unanswered power shots, okay? And Frazier had in the 14th round, and Frazier had both eyes shut and couldn't see. It was obvious he was finished. Ali was handily ahead on the scorecards. He was so far ahead. One judge had him ahead 6 rounds. One judge had him ahead 5 rounds. One judge had him ahead 4 rounds. That short of a knockout, He could not lose the fight. And they had to know that in the corner that he was ahead like that, especially after that 14th round. So why would he quit? Wally Muhammad never, ever made this claim on the record or publicly. He just told that reporter that. Yeah, why would he quit that far ahead? There are also claims Ali himself told Hauser he was done after the 14th round. But if recorded, such has never been released and was never a statement made publicly or anyone else. Yes, he did make it. He made it years later. I heard him say it on a TV show a couple years later. He did say that, but not around that time of the fight. And then it was just talk by then. I don't think he would have actually quit. What's up, Al Booger? Gassiev just smashed Kula. Oh, the fight's on now? Wow, I didn't know that. Salute, Al Booger. We winding down. Yeah, we talking about whether Ali told Angelo Dundee to cut his gloves off. Angelo said it didn't happen. Ali said it didn't happen. And the way it got started, one of his cornermen, Wally Muhammad, told a reporter that after the fight, I guess days or I don't know how long after the fight, but it wasn't that same night. And then came to find out Ali had fired Wally Muhammad, and he was bitter. So that's why he made that up, right? But again, and then between the 14th and 15th round, close fight, all the noise in there, and Wally Muhammad never came up to the ring apron between rounds. He was on the floor, so there's no way he could have heard what Ali and Angelo Dundee was talking about. Maybe he can read lips. I don't know. But it seemed like he made it up to me. And Ali was way ahead on the cards. And they had to know that. And Frazier couldn't see. It was no way Frazier was going to win round 15. Frazier said all he could see in front of him was a shadow. And he was just trying to get close to Ali and get a lucky shot in because he said he knew Ali was tired too. But he said he couldn't even see Ali. All he could see in front of him was a shadow, we figure, right? So no, Ali wouldn't have quit. But he said that years later on a late night show that he wasn't coming up. He just said that after he saw Frazier throw the towel in, right? But he wouldn't have quit. The man was asking him about it. And he said, when Frazier threw the towel in, I wasn't coming out neither, but that was just talk. You know, he would not have actually quit. And that was years later. But as far as cutting the gloves off, I don't know about. I don't believe he said that. Right? The Thriller in Manila was the best and possibly most brutal fight ever. Heavyweight, whatever, any division. Possibly the most brutal fight ever. It was the third and final fight between Ali and Frazier. Okay? Known as the Thriller in Manila. October 1st, 1975 in the Philippines. Okay? And Ali won by 14th round TKO. Yep. Yeah. Probably the greatest fight of all time. But we're going to end it right there. But I remember that, I think it was the 6th round. They said Ali gave Frazier the fight because he thought Frazier was done. And he was just giving Joe Frazier one last payday before he retired. And so when he got to about the 6th round, Ali was like, damn, this man ain't finished. And he said he told Joe Frazier in the ring, they told me you was all washed up, Joe. And Frazier said back to Ali, they lied. Okay, but I appreciate everybody that stopped by for the week. Monday, we're going to try to get in the show where we're going to look at how to make a fight from beginning to end. Gassiev smashed him. Ooh, I thought Gassiev was done, but wow. Man. Yeah, I'm going to check that out now. Okay, we got fights tomorrow. I think Pacheco fights tomorrow. Yeah. Diego. I'm not really sold on Diego yet, but hey, you know, he's young. So maybe he's going to improve. Especially after that old guy, what was his name? Like Bomac trainer. Gave him such a tough time. I was like, Diego, you're not supposed to be having the trouble with this man. The trouble you have. Diego won it, but I was like, man, Diego, you're supposed to like walk right through this guy. But so I don't know. 168. How's he gonna do it against people like Billy? And what was the guy Martinez, one that just had that last slugfest with Billy? Diego got some tough guys up there at 168. And Diego will probably be at cruiserweight eventually because he's young, big tall guy. Against the Benavidez's, 175 soon. Cruiserweight too. If it balls, Viterbiev will probably be gone before Diego gets up that high. But I appreciate everybody. Al Booger, Mike Rim, RP, Mike Masick, and Miss Cass. Everybody have a great weekend. Oh, you're not sold on Diego neither? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Al Booger. He young, so, maybe. He got a lot of time to improve, yeah. So, yeah. We just have to see. Be patient with the young fella, and maybe he'll get better. But I don't think so. I don't think he ever going to be no big thing in boxing. I really don't. But we'll see, though. But right now, I don't know. A lot of people ain't. I was talking to Defiant Arnie yesterday. He said he's not sold on it. So, man. And then he not with the Benavidez's in it. Defiant Arnie told me that. Yeah. He got another trainer. He got, I think, Joel Diaz, I think. Yeah, but he's not with the Benavidez camp anymore either. He said it wasn't nothing bad, just a business decision. So I don't know. Maybe the new trainer will help him. Maybe he felt that he wasn't happy with himself, So yeah. But we'll see. I think he fights tomorrow. Diego is tomorrow, I believe. I know it's this weekend. I don't think I believe Diego is tomorrow. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm almost certain of it. Okay, but yeah, Just Do is coming up. Yeah, we just went over a few different topics today. Yesterday was the anniversary of Muhammad Ali's last fight, September 11th, 1981. So we talked about that. He went out. When the way Joe Louis went out in 1952 against Rocky, fought too long, and Ali said he was not going to end up like that, and look how he ended up. Just as bad, getting beat up against Holmes and Berbick. And then you got to look at if he'd have quit after the second Spinks fight, wouldn't have had those two fights, because he took a lot of punishment in the Holmes and Berbick fights. Maybe the Parkinson's wouldn't have got to the level it got to, them two fights, because he already was suffering from it as early as the second Spinks fight, and maybe earlier, because they say his movements was already slowing down and his speech was slurred some by the second Spinks fight. And maybe earlier than that, but it was at least as early as the second Spinks fight, he was suffering from Parkinson's. So we don't know. Maybe if he hadn't had those two fights. And we went over Eddie Futch, Ali's kryptonite. He told Kenny Norton when Ali's pectoral muscle twitched, he getting ready to throw a jab. And yeah, that was it. Eddie Futch knew him. The only one knew Ali better than Eddie Futch was Angelo Dundee, his actual trainer. Yeah. But I appreciate everybody. We'll be back Monday. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Appreciate y'all. Everybody have a great and safe weekend. I will talk to y'all on the other side of it on Monday.